10 states you should never move to in 2025, especially if you're black. Picture this. You're cruising down the interstate with your life packed into boxes. You've said your goodbyes, signed the lease, and mapped out your dreams in a new city. Maybe it's for a job, school, or a fresh start. But what if your American dream just crossed the border into a quiet nightmare? What if that beautiful neighborhood hides the kind of racism that doesn't scream? It whispers, restricts, and quietly locks doors behind your back. In 2025, racism isn't always violent. It's systemic, it's subtle, it's suffocating. And in some states, it's still alive and thriving, especially if you're black. Scope News dug deep into incarceration data, health disparities, home ownership gaps, and education outcomes to find the 10 U.S. states where black Americans face the steepest climb just to survive, let alone succeed. Wisconsin, the hidden cage. Wisconsin might look picture perfect on postcards, but the reality for black families is grim. Milwaukee is still one of the most segregated cities in America. The state imprisons black men at a rate nearly 12 times higher than white men, one of the worst disparities in the country. Black families in Wisconsin are less likely to own homes, more likely to live in poverty, and face disproportionate school suspensions and job denials. Racism here wears a Midwestern smile, but its impact hits hard. Minnesota, where justice is still delayed. After George Floyd's murder sparked global protests, Minnesota swore it would lead the charge for change. But by 2025, little has improved. The state has one of the worst homeownership gaps in the nation, with fewer than 26% of black Minnesotans owning their homes compared to 77% of white residents. Job discrimination, wage suppression, and over-policing continue to thrive in cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul. Being progressive on paper doesn't stop black trauma in practice. Mississippi, the past isn't even past. Mississippi is proof that not all ghosts wear sheets. In Jackson, the state's capital and a majority black city, the water crisis revealed a deep, intentional neglect. Residents are still living with crumbling infrastructure, while state leaders fight to remove black elected officials from decision-making power. Black schools are underfunded. Hospitals in black counties are closing. And let's not forget, the Confederate-themed state flag was only retired in 2020. Mississippi didn't evolve, it just updated the wallpaper. Louisiana, toxic air and tainted power. If you're black in Louisiana, you're more likely to live near refineries, landfills, and chemical plants. They call it Cancer Alley. But the real disease is environmental racism. Black residents breathe toxic air, drink polluted water, and die younger. Meanwhile, the state locks up more black people per capita than nearly anywhere else in the world. Add to that an underfunded education system and gentrification in cities like New Orleans, and it's clear, Louisiana profits from black suffering, not black success. Missouri, the fire still burns. Ferguson made global headlines in 2014, but Missouri hasn't changed much since. Police violence, racial profiling, and legal corruption remain rampant. In places like St. Louis, you can walk 2 blocks and cross from a black neighborhood with failing schools to a white one with million-dollar homes. Black children in Missouri are suspended at 5 times the rate of white kids. Traffic stops are still racially skewed, and local policies make it nearly impossible for black communities to control their own neighborhoods. Indiana, still sundown, still silent. Indiana's history of sundown towns lingers like smoke. From Martinsville to Evansville, many towns were once openly hostile to black residents. Today, the hostility is coded, but just as dangerous. Black Hoosiers are over-policed, underpaid, and politically sidelined. The Ku Klux Klan once called Indiana home base, and in many ways, the state has never fully reckoned with that legacy. Hoosier hospitality rarely applies to people of color. Kentucky, where justice is a ghost. The murder of Breonna Taylor in Louisville should have been a turning point, but in 2025, Kentucky has doubled down on aggressive policing and turned away from real reform. Black Kentuckians face unemployment rates nearly double the state average and are more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested. Meanwhile, The prison industry is booming, and private corporations are profiting off of black pain. If you're black and poor, Kentucky's criminal justice system will find you and monetize your misery. South Carolina, a plantation in disguise. South Carolina is polished on the surface, especially in tourist traps like Charleston. But behind the scenes, it's a different story. Gullah Geechee communities fight erasure. Black neighborhoods are pushed out by developers, and Confederate flags still fly proudly in rural counties. Black students are disproportionately expelled, housing is redlined through zoning tricks, and generational wealth is blocked by unfair taxation and lack of legal protections. It's the Old South, with Wi-Fi and worse lawyers. Ohio, where redlining was never erased. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton. These cities should offer opportunity, but they're home to some of the worst racial disparities in the Midwest. Black residents face food deserts, lower wages, failing schools, and predatory housing practices. Ohio's police forces are deeply resistant to reform. Body cams are underfunded. Civilian review boards lack teeth. And when it comes to public health, black women in Ohio are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. Illinois, where Chicago isn't the whole story. Yes, Chicago has its issues, but Illinois' problems go far beyond the Windy City. In smaller towns like Peoria, Springfield, and Rockford, racism hides in plain sight. Police stop black drivers at twice the rate of whites, even when accounting for population differences. Black job applicants in downstate Illinois are routinely denied based on coded language. Black children are over-disciplined, and in courtrooms across the state, your skin color can still determine your sentence. The history behind the hate. What ties these 10 states together isn't just bad policy. It's a brutal history that never got buried. These are places where enslaved Africans were traded on courthouse steps, where Jim Crow signs once lined downtown streets, and where lynchings were public events. Wisconsin and Minnesota might not scream Deep South, but they were complicit in redlining and exclusionary zoning laws that kept black families out of wealth-building neighborhoods. Mississippi, Louisiana, and South Carolina were literal pillars of the plantation economy. Indiana and Kentucky hosted thousands of Ku Klux Klan members, many of whom ran for office and won. Missouri's border state identity meant it adopted the worst habits of both North and South, enslaving people until the Civil War's end and brutalizing them long after. Ohio and Illinois offered freedom papers but rarely true freedom, trapping black migrants from the Great Migration in segregated ghettos while denying them access to unions, loans, and justice. The patterns we see today were not accidental. They were engineered, and those blueprints are still being followed. So what does this mean? This list isn't about demonizing entire states. It's about naming the systems that continue to choke opportunity for black Americans in places that refuse to fix their foundations. You can be a college graduate, a veteran, a business owner, a parent. None of that shields you if the system you move into is already rigged against your success. These 10 states have shown, through legislation and inaction, that black life is still undervalued and over-surveilled. If you're considering relocating, don't just ask what the job pays or how the schools rank. Ask what the racial history is. Ask who controls the courts, who owns the land, who runs the police departments. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing about a new city isn't what's visible, it's what's built into the bones of the place. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. This report draws on verified data from the U.S. Census Bureau, Economic Policy Institute, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, 24/7 Wall St., Public Health Disparity Reports, and historical archives from the Equal Justice Initiative and Mapping Police Violence Project. Special thanks to researchers exposing incarceration rates, home ownership gaps, school suspension disparities, and redlining maps. We're not here to fearmonger. We're here to reveal what polite society tries to cover up. This content is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. While Scope News makes every effort to ensure factual accuracy and source integrity, local conditions may change over time. This video includes commentary on systemic racism and is not intended to target individuals or communities. Scope News seeks to reflect history and contemporary social dynamics with journalistic responsibility.